So today I'll give a teaching. As I said yesterday, Buddhism teaches the reality of the basis and in relation to that basis, how do we view the objects and the phenomena is divided into the permanent phenomena and impermanent phenomena, or function objects. And within the function objects or impermanent phenomena, there are three. The physical objects, and then we have consciousness and the abstract phenomena called non-associated compositional factor. And through interaction with the objects, then we have the consciousness. And when we talk about the aggregates, the psychophysical aggregates and the sources of consciousness and so forth, then there is also the feeling aggregate. So we have a feeling, or we have the experiences of pleasure and pain, and pain is something we do not want. So all the sentient beings do not want suffering, but do want happiness. So that is the basis. So on the basis of the objects, then how do sentient beings experience pleasure and pain? So with regard to how the nature of things and how the things are perceived, then we have the different philosophical tenets. So with regard to the nature of things, the reality of the basis, there were in the past those who rejected consciousness, and even today there are those who do. Radical materialists do believe in that kind of thing. But things are changing now. And then there are views which say that things do not arise. Things arise from without causes and conditions. And then with regard to the consciousness, the experience of pain and pleasure, and then, of course, there are those who believe in theistic religions which say that these experiences arise from the Creator, because of the Creator. So whether it's Christianity, Hinduism, or all these theistic religions, believe in the Creator. So all these religions believe in the Creator. Buddhism and certain other religious traditions say that if things were created by God, and on the other hand they say that the God is almighty and all compassionate and all that, But if they have their creation is within the creation, there are a whole lot of problems. They also, of course, there is a philosophical idea of free will, but from the point of view of Buddhism, from a philosophical point of view, within the Buddhism itself, there are many different arguments between the philosophical traditions, rejecting some ideas and accepting others. Although from the point of view of Buddhism, we can argue against the theistic religions, but as a religion, Christianity and all these other religions do benefit people in the world. So if things were without causes, they cannot arise. If they if they arise from permanent cause, the cause has either got to stay permanently or cannot exist at all. So because the effects that they give rise to change, and therefore it is evident that the causes themselves have to undergo change. Therefore, Buddhism says that things that arise from causes and conditions cannot arise from permanent causes, nor causelessly. And therefore, Buddhism teaches that of the dependent origination. This is it sums up the teaching of the Buddha. Things arise from the causes and conditions, and the changes happen because of the causes and conditions. And because of that, if you think closely, then you can see that things do not have independent existence. They are merely imputed through dependence and do not have any independent existence. So that is the subtle view. So until you reach that point, you'll go through the nature. You are actually dealing with the nature of things, how they exist. And when you talk about morality, they're saying that certain things have to be adopted while others have to be discarded. So until you, up to this point, you are merely establishing how things actually exist. You're not dealing with relating it to the moral issues as such. So this is something which is a subject that is related and that has some connection with academic studies. And on the basis of this, the basic nature of things, then how it's related to our pleasure and pain, and explaining this on the basis of the philosophical views, then we have the two types of the dependence, causality, dependence of causality, and dependence of the by imputation. And then there is the presentation in Buddhism of the primary mind and secondary minds. So understanding of these, the nature of things as they are, and the mind and mental factors. Of course, pleasure and pain is something that we do not need to reason out about this. This is something instinctively happening to us. And within the pleasure and pains, we have the physical and the mental. So the physical pain and mental pains arise from their causes and conditions. and therefore we have to think about the causes. So because we want happiness, pleasurable feelings, we have to cultivate the causes for them, and because we don't want suffering, we have to avoid creating the negative causes for them. So out of the two, the physical and mental pain, and mental is more powerful. If you, for example, if you are sick, physically sick, but if your mind is rather, you can stay stably, calmly, then it's kind of overrides the physical pain. For example, if someone were the believer of theistic religion, then they can think in terms of their pain having been created by God. And so in this way they can calm themselves. And physically, and similarly, Buddhists can think about karma, thinking that this pain is because of my karma that I've created in the past. And also for the athletes, they really go through strenuous practices, trainings, in which they do feel pain physically, but because of their goal of winning some award and so forth, they do not consider it a big problem. They undergo it. And then very rich people and people with power and authority, they may not have physical pain as such, not much, but because of their thought processes, a lot of thinking and hopes and fears and so forth, or dissentiment and so because the mind is disturbed from through all this thinking, fear and hopes, therefore, although they may have physical pleasure, physically they may have comfort and all that, but the mind is not stable, and therefore they have huge mental problems. So the physical problems or physical pain can be overcome or overwhelmed by the mental satisfaction. And so when it comes to solving the problems of mind, then spirituality comes into this picture. The English term religion, which is a Western term. So the word religion is related with the Western culture, and they're using it in connection with theistic religion, where they believe in a creator God. And so from that point of view, Buddhism is not a religion. So some people say that Buddhism is not a religion but a science of mind. So if you call Buddhism spirituality, it is broader. So to reduce mental suffering and increase happiness, we have spirituality. So within spirituality, there are those practices which are meant for achieving goals of this life alone. So I call it secular ethics. So I don't talk about the past and future lives as such. So we're only dealing here with the means to cultivate happiness in this life. So we're not talking also about liberation, but only relating to this life, how to live a happy life. So, with regard to that, we can talk about the techniques which do not necessarily have to be related to spirituality. So, within the spirituality or religion, there are in the Sanskrit it's called dharma. There are theistic and not non-theistic or God religions which believe in God, and religions which are godless. So within the second category, there's Buddhism comes into that category. So with regard to the teaching, yesterday I asked if you have any suggestions for a text that I should teach. We don't have much time. No. So because we don't have much time, I'm sure you know this verse. Not committing any evil, cultivating wealth of virtues, and taming the mind. This is teaching of the Buddha, and also the verse which says the stars, ophthalmic cataracts and so forth, which are impermanent and so forth. So if you know all these two verses, so we talked about the Buddhist teaching or the theory of dependent origination, within which there are the dependence through causality and dependence by way of imputation. So with regard to the first verse, since happiness and pain arise through causes and conditions, the cause of unhappiness or suffering is that of negative actions. The objective of Buddhist practice is that of higher rebirth and or definite goodness, which is refers to liberation, nirvana, omniscience. So the happy life is something we all desire, and since that is the case, we talk about higher rebirths where you experience such as human life, where you have happiness, and joy, and comfort, and all this. And then, if you think closely from the point of view of Buddhism, suffering comes ultimately from that of ignorance. And therefore, this is something we have to overcome. And when you overcome this ignorance, then you attain nirvana or liberation. And so this nirvana is what is known as definite goodness. And so in order to achieve that first, you have to try to attain higher rebirths. And then so the nirvana is something which is the freedom from all causes for suffering, which is ultimately the ignorance. So the freedom from the causes of suffering, and suffering is that of the definite goodness or nirvana. So the higher rebirths and nirvana are the objectives. So this has to be attained through. These have to be attained through that, based on the mind, which has this clear light nature. So it's all this is because it's giving a teaching. This is homage to the mother of all Buddhas, the perfection of wisdom. Deatha gate para sangate bodhi swaha. Deatha gate para sangate bodhi swaha. 저는 근신이게 니시텐스 강에 단도 라탐버치나 남신 강당야다 템베 tumnam 바꾼데 나서 디숨바 년도 창주 선배 소체 선제kin 힘대라 차츠로 가바메 바케메 바체도메 바타메 메바 다데테메 텐징 저번이 시시된 바토가 선제만은 기탐바데라 차츠로 So we have said certain verses which come from Abhisamayalankara and also Nagarjuna's Madhyamaka Karika. So when we engage in this kind of Dharma discourse, from both the teacher and the students have to have good motivation. Therefore, we have to correct our motivation. And therefore, let's say this verse, I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha Dharma and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. So let's say this 3 times. Dola Pinchira Sangye Droba Shu. Zoge Chonamla Chanjo Pardo Dane Gyapsochi. Dage Chunyenge Be Zonamge. Dola Pinchira Sangye Droba Shu. So this is Nagarjuna's prostration to the Buddha for his kindness. Merely attaining, engaging in practices to attain higher rebirth is not a practice of Buddhism, but it is also there in other traditions. So practices which lead to rebirth in higher rebirths, such as humans and gods in the desire realm, something which common to Buddhism and non-Buddhist traditions. So for that first, and then there is also the practices through concentration to attain equanimity of mind, which exist in the non-Buddhist texts, scriptures. Even today there are, and it seems there are non-Buddhist practitioners who have really high level of concentration. And similarly, the Christianity and Islam and so forth, which accept created God. Although they, from in their own traditions, they do not accept. But from the point of view, tradition, they do not accept higher rebirth as such. But from the point of view of Buddhism, they do, and they have practices of cultivating virtue, wholesome actions, practicing compassion. All this. These are causes for higher rebirths from the Buddhist point of view, although they themselves do not assert that. So the practice of love, compassion, and all these which are taught in all religions are causes for higher rebirths. Now, in Buddhism, Buddhism teaches the practicing the 10 virtuous actions. Perhaps these are also common to other religions like Christianity or Islam and so forth. Such as not killing, not stealing, not committing social misconduct, practicing chastity, and then not lying, not using harsh language, not talking, not engaging in divisive talk, and not engaging in gossip, and then also not engaging in covetousness, greed, and harmful intent. So covetousness is necessarily attachment or desire. So whereas desire is not necessarily covetousness. So these two mental states are also common to non-Buddhist traditions. And then with regard to the last one, which is giving up a wrong view, perhaps it can be interpreted in terms of the different religions, their own beliefs. So in Buddhism, there is also the wrong view, which is exaggeration of things, where you say that if things do not have any true existence, if things have some existence, they have to exist in truly from their own side, independently of that. Whereas, on the other hand, you have also the view that if things do not have any essence in themselves, then they cannot exist at all. So that the second one is more that of a nihilistic view. Now, the unique teaching of Buddhism is that of nirvana, the teaching of nirvana, the definite goodness. In Jainism also they talk about attaining nirvana, but deep down in their belief there is a belief in an Atma. So that's view is there in all the different religions. Not only that, of course, we all followers of religions have the innate kind of grasping at self, but independent self. But in the non-Buddhist traditions, they even philosophically assert it, and so a permanent substantial self exists in other traditions. So they are, in a way, kind of reinforcing this belief in a permanent self. Of course, we have this belief innately, but through the philosophical views, they assert it and makes it firmer. And then in Buddhism, through training, what happens is you are able to overcome this belief or the clinging to a self, which is said to dissolve within the empty nature of the mind, and that is what we call that of the nirvana. So the true cessation, which is the pacification of true suffering and true origin of suffering, is the liberation, or and therefore the Buddhist practice, or the teaching of Buddhism, comes down to attaining this goal of true cessation or nirvana. And therefore, in the first verse, the second line says, "Cultivate a wealth of virtue." So, virtue and non-virtue, or wholesome and unwholesome actions, have to be asserted in relation to their fruits, their results, and therefore those actions which are bring about harmful effects are negative, whereas those actions which bring about positive results are those of virtue. So for example, if we take this body of ours, if we trace its origin in Buddhism, and especially Kala Chakra Tantra, it talks about a space particle. In the higher Abhidharma text, there is it says that there is some kind of a physical thing which really appears, which actually is there, but it cannot appear to the sense faculties, the sense consciousnesses, the sensory consciousness, but only it can appear only to the mental consciousness, such as like a dream state. What you see in dream cannot appear to your senses, but they can appear to your mind. So this kind of phenomena is called Chugi Kechik Suk, so a physical phenomena, which is phenomenon of the source of phenomena, or something like that. And then there are certain other things which can appear because of your power of your concentration. So these are physical things which and then there is something called Ngombarkabhyaki Suk, which is like a physical, some physical thing which appears at some time. Perhaps they are thinking about, the authors in the past were thinking about some kind of a light, which today in quantum physics they see when through the microscopes, this kind of thing. So perhaps these waves they see particles as this kind of phenomena, physical phenomena. And so, if you think about the material condition of this body, of course, we trace to our parents, blood and semen, and then that in turn can be traced back to their parents and so forth until we come to the Darwinian theory of evolution. So when you trace this into the substantial cause of this body, we can trace it to millions of years back. The subtle particles that existed at that time. So that is the substantial cause, or the material cause. Just as we said yesterday that if you trace the substantial cause of mind, you can only get mind and not a material thing, which can serve as a substantial cause of mind. So this is something which is nature. So how these particles and subtle particles have arisen and given rise to their effects and so forth can be explained in terms of nature, as in our own logic. We talk about 4 principles, and one of them is that of nature. So, and then there is the functioning principle of function, which is like the fire having that of the nature of hotness. And so the 4 elements have their own characteristics. We do not have to, when we talk about fire or the elements, we do not have to have them real, the physical fire and so forth, but the nature, which is hotness and so forth, shows that these are there. So these did not arise because of the blessings of Buddha and so forth, but their nature. And then when they come together, there's some kind of a reaction and between them, interaction, and also because of the different kinds of minds interacting with each other, there is all kinds of experiences, such as if your compassion is more powerful, then it can reduce that of anger. Whereas if your anger is more powerful, then it can overcome your compassion. So this this shows that through some kind of relation to others, dependence, the principle of dependence comes into play here. The things arise because of their causes and conditions, dependence on them. And therefore, the negative actions give rise to the negative results. So the actions that are created through our 3 doors, mind, body, and speech, which are harmful, give rise to suffering. And therefore, we have to see that this is how it works, and therefore, because we want happiness, we have to increase the causes of happiness, which is to increase the positive actions, cultivation of positive actions, and reduce those of the reduce the causes of suffering. So the second line says not to commit any evil actions, but cultivate the virtue. So happiness and suffering have to do with mind, and therefore it has to be explained in terms of the mind, and you have to trace its cause within the mind. And it is the action of mind. There is the action of mind and the intent in terms of the intention and the intended action. So the experience of pain and pleasure have to be traced as the uncommon factor or cause have to be traced to the mind. And therefore we talk about the action, and action is some kind of a work, and therefore which is motivated, comes through some kind of a motivation. And because this action, which is if it is something that is beneficial, then we call it's something that we want. Then there are certain actions which are motivated and acted out, which bring about harm to others. But ultimately what happens is it leaves an imprint on our mind, and because of that imprint, we ultimately suffer because of that. And so if we take these two lines, not to commit any evil actions and commit wealth of virtues, we can relate this to the practices of attaining higher rebirth. And perhaps we can also relate the second line to that of a higher rebirth, because it says a wealth of virtues. So because of that, we can relate it to nirvana. Ultimately, because whether you creating negative and positive actions are rooted in a disciplined or undisciplined mind. We can relate this to the attainment of nirvana and higher rebirths, and also to the three trainings of morality, concentration, and wisdom. The first line refers to, because it says do not to commit any evil. You are actually abstaining from engaging in harming others, actions which harm others, and therefore it can be related to morality. And the second line to concentration, and the third line to that of wisdom. And another way of interpreting these three is the first line can be related to giving up or avoiding engaging in actions which are not meritorious, and then the second line can be related to committing actions which are meritorious, and then the third line can be referred to the overcoming of grasping at a true existence, and so it can be understood as a summary of the teaching of all the teachings of the Buddha that are taught in Hinayana and Mahayana traditions. So, of course, you may find sometimes situations where you become short-tempered and all that, but never, even if somebody harms you, at that moment you might engage in some kind of an active action, but you should not have any kind of a deep resentment and towards the other. So if you help others, then the result is you'll have happiness. If you harm others, it results in unhappiness or suffering for you. And so you should not engage in any kind of negative actions, not even in thought, uh, holding grudge to at others and so forth. And then you should, as it is said in the second line, cultivate the wealth of virtues. So at best, you should help others, try to help others, but even if you cannot help others, do not at least harm others. So these are, in other words, within these two, you can sum up the teaching of the Buddha. So we're not here talking about from the point of view of theistic religion, where it says that if you do help others, then the Creator God will be happy, or if you harm others, the Creator God will be unhappy, and so forth. We're not talking about that, but we are here basically talking about how we can create a good situation for ourselves and others, and for that we have to tame our mind, subdue the mind, or discipline the mind. And then how you do that is you find this in the teaching in the next verse, which comes from I think the Vajrachateka. So in Buddhism, we talk about four wrong views, such as holding things as permanent where they are impermanent, and where they are in the nature of suffering, holding them as being in a pleasant, pleasurable kind of nature. And then whereas they are empty of any clean or self, we hold this body as being clean, and whereas things do not have any independent self, we're holding them as having some kind of a self-identity. And then there are 8 different analogies that are used. So this verse, which says, so like the stars, the eye, cataract, and lamp, and so forth. This verse comes from Vajrachateka, the Diamond Cutter Sutra, whereas the earlier verse, not to commit any evil and so forth, comes from the sutra called the Confession and Restoration of the 7 Buddhas. So, with regard to the second verse, the analogy of star says that when the sun is there, there is no appearance of the stars into our eyes, whereas when the sun sets, then we can see the stars. So likewise for us, all the things in our life exist. When we do not make any kind of analysis on them, then they do exist. Whereas if you explore into the things, then to find out how they really exist, then we can find them. In Madhyamaka Karika of Nagarjuna, it says that the teaching of the Buddhas are based on the two truths. and which are the conventional worldly truth, and then the ultimate truth. And also Chandrakirti's Madhyamaka Avatara says that each and everything has these two truths on them, the conventional and the ultimate. So these two truths are taught or referred to by this analogy of the stars. Because of our ignorance, there is the appearance of the dualistic appearance to our mind when we see things. Except, it is said that except for the mind of an Arya being, which is totally absorbed in non-duality, the rest of the consciousness of sentient beings have dualism. So, just when we do not do any kind of analysis but accept things as conventionally, then they exist, just like the stars in the night. Whereas when the wisdom of the son of the wisdom, which sees the true nature of things as they are, then the appearance of the stars disappear. And that's how the analogy of the star is used. So in that case, you say that things do exist. When the things appear to us, they appear as if they have some kind of ultimate nature in themselves. In the lower philosophical schools of Buddhism, they do assert that things have some kind of existence from their side, because that's how they really appear. So they insist that things have such an existence because that's how they appear to us, and we can point at them, as they say. So that is the reason they use to say that things do have some kind of existence in and of themselves. And the answer to this from the Prasankhika Madhyamaka is that this does not justify their existence from their own side, but because of our ignorance, which has the wrong way of seeing reality, these things appear to have some kind of existence from their side. So this distorted mind, as Chandrakirti says, that the conventional reality is because of the ignorance covering our mind from seeing the true nature. So, for example, if someone has some kind of a defect in their eyes, sometimes things, some kind of a blackish thing hanging in this space appear to their eyes. And this is not because the thing is out there, but because of the defect in his or her eyes. When that defect is removed, then that appearance will disappear of its own accord. Then, when the cataract is removed, that kind of appearance that the person had earlier will disappear. And therefore, similarly, the appearance of things from their own side is because of some kind of a defect in our eyes, our vision, our mind. And if things were to have such an existence as the lower schools say, then we have to be able to. This has to be able to this has to become clearer and clearer. But that is not the case. They actually, when you try to look for the reality of the things, they actually disappear. So if you assert that things have to exist the way they appear to us, that is not the case. So this, the analogy of the star refers or shows that of the empty nature of things. And if things are empty, then the qualm would be there is actually the effects of things that we actually experience. Good and bad, and so forth, are there, they say. So the Madhyamaka answer is that of course they are there, but these exist, good, bad, and so forth, exist merely through imputation. And then the analogy for that is shown in the verse by the lamp, butter lamp. So when we see a lamp, it appears as if the lamp exists from its own side, but it's not that way, because if you put some container on top of the, if you cover it with a container, then the lamp flame will go out. So that shows the flame is dependent on other factors. So although the lamp seems to exist from its own side, when we see it, it does not. It exists through dependence on many different factors. So that things are empty, although they do have some appearance, is shown by that of the cataract, and that things have some exist through dependence is shown by the analogy of the lamp. And then there's the analogy of magical illusion. So we even dream of fighting with other people, and then then there is also attachment in dream that arises in us. So although these happen in dream, but they do not have any substance. So likewise, the objects that we people whom we interact through attachment and hatred, and then the dewdrops. So the magical illusion shows that there is no things do not exist the way they appear as such. And then the dewdrops that form in the night on tip of grass blades and so forth, they shows that of impermanent nature, that things change moment by moment. From moment to moment things change, and therefore the dewdrops show that. And then the bubble. So the bubble is the nature of it is water. So it comes from the water and it dissolves back into water. So it arises from the water and goes back to water. And so likewise, our experience of pain and pleasure or neutral feelings and so forth, all of them, so long as you are under the sway of negative thoughts and emotions, they arise from the nature of suffering, and they go back into the suffering nature. So not only the suffering of suffering or that of the changeable suffering. Benjamin Lawson Shakin says that when you think about the sufferings of samsara, Benjamin Lawson Shakin says that when you think about different kinds of sufferings, then the sense of fear of the suffering of suffering is even in the animals. They don't even want to avoid that of suffering of suffering. For example, if you see a bug and try to harm it, it will try to avoid you. So that shows there's this sense of not wanting suffering. But then the impure or contaminated experience of pleasure or happiness with regard to it, so which is related with this kind of samsaric aggregate that we have. So they ultimately get destroyed. It's just as the bubble comes from the water and ultimately goes back to water. Likewise, these experience arise from the composite factors, so and they go back to the composite factors as well. And therefore the contaminated kind of sufferings are something even the non-Buddhist practitioners try to avoid. Whereas this contaminated or the karmically arisen aggregates that we have, which is the basis of all kinds of suffering, the 6 types of suffering and so forth, it comes from our negative thoughts and emotions and our karma. So long as you are in the sway of these two, then you are bound to have this kind of suffering. And then the next line says a dream, like the dream, the lightning, and clouds. So when we take, it's about a dream. Dreams are merely memories. So it shows that whatever we have dreamt last night has ceased already. So there's no point in getting attached to good dreams or being disturbed or by the bad dreams, because they have ceased to exist anymore. So this analogy of the dream shows the things in the past, whereas the lightning shows that of things in the present. It's just a momentary existence. So with regard to the three times, past, future, and present, there are different ways of positing the three times, such as the Vaibhashikas say that all three times exist substantially, and whereas the Sotantikas say that present is real and the past and future are not real. Whereas the Prasangika Madhyamaka see that all three times is dependent. So today we are on the time now is 11 minutes past 10 o'clock on this date, the 2nd of June 2010. So if you think carefully, you reduce a year to months, months to weeks, weeks to days, and days to hours, hours to minutes, and then seconds. There you cannot actually find. And then if you say, it is now, this very second, you don't really have something to point to. So the time keeps running. So if you cannot point to the present, because a moment ago it is past, and now it's a moment later it will be future. So you cannot find the present. But although you cannot find points at the present as such, but we have, in a conventional sense, we can talk about the present time, such as we have attachment now, and there's the minutes, seconds, and day, and so forth. Today, or now, the present moment. So the past is something like a dream, which is just a memory now, and the present is like a momentary existence of this lightning, and then the future is something which we anticipate, wishing that. How nice if this can happen, this could happen to me, and so forth. Just as the clouds form through the water vapors and coming together of many factors. So just by depending on causes and conditions, these come into existence. So when we have a very strong attachment, either by remembering something that had happened in the past, or something that is happening now, or by anticipating something that would come in the future, something in the future. So the last line says that one should view all these compounded phenomena like these, like they are in the nature of impermanence, that they have no self-nature, and they are in the nature of suffering. So when we talk about pleasure and pain, take a person who you see before you become angry at him, and after you become angry at him or her. For example, if you hear somebody telling you that this such and such person is, if somebody tells you that such and such person is really bad and he is really talking bad about you, what do you feel about him? Now, after hearing this, you will say this person is such a bad person. And when you see this person, of course you might smile, but it would be just a diplomatic smile. But this same person may appear differently, and some days later. So, suppose there is a person who is bad, whom you consider to be a very bad person, and if you hear that this person has done something good, you will not believe it, because your perception of that person, whom you dislike, you look at that person with your hatred, and therefore you do not see that person to have such good quality. So you say, this is not possible. So because you perceive that person to have no change, not undergoing any change, and that's why this kind of thing is happening. Because you see the person to be ugly, to be totally disgusting, and so forth, and you justify that to yourself. And because of that, you hold on to the person you grasp at that person as being totally bad. And when someone says he has done something good, you don't believe it. So that is because of perceiving or viewing that person to have that to be bad totally from his own side. And therefore you have these emotions. Emotional reactions towards this person. So love and hate are said that to arise because of grasping at a true existence in things. So Madhyamaka philosophy is talking about that. If you see that things do not have any true existence in and of themselves, then you can get rid of love and hate towards them. And in Heart Sutra it says that form is empty, emptiness itself is form. In the 25,000 verses of Perfection of Wisdom Sutra, it says that the emptiness of the form is not something which the form itself has created. So if you say that there is the appearance of a form, but the appearance is there, but there's no ultimate existence of the self, whereas you are still holding on to the independent existence of the form, then this saying of the 25,000 verses of Prajaparamita and also the Heart Sutra comes to this. Because the form has come about as a result of different causes and conditions, and therefore it can be empty of inherent existence. So if you rephrase it, for example, so if you think, I am empty, and this emptiness itself is me. Because when you think about form or some physical thing outside, then it appears as if the thing is out there independently. Whereas if you think about yourself, then you can say that This body is not me. From the top, the crown of my head down to my soles and feet, you can find me in the body. Now can you find yourself in the mind, because you cannot point to any state of consciousness or moment of consciousness as that person, the I, whether in waking state or dreaming state or deep sleep state or dying stage and so forth. When you die, there you come to the point of the clear light of death, and that also ceases to exist anymore once you separate from this body. So you cannot really point to any part of you, whether it's for the body or the mind, as being yourself. Therefore, it shows that self or I is empty of any inherent existence. But then you can still say that I do exist. I am here. I am a man, I am a woman, I am a girl, boy, I am young, I am old, I am a bhikshu, and so forth. Because this existence is posited as I'm through designation, mere designation. So without which you cannot posit an I. You cannot say I'm a man or I'm a woman without relation to the aggregates. So if you can actually establish self, a person, merely through dependence on the aggregates, then you can talk about I being a male or women, or a male or female, or old or young, and so forth. So if there were to be a soul which is independent from the aggregates, then the soul has to would remain as an ordinary person's soul will remain an ordinary person and cannot become a Buddha. Whereas if you are able to posit this person through designation, mere designation, then you can talk about going through transformation from an ordinary person to the ultimate being of Buddha. So therefore you can say I am empty, and this emptiness is me or I. Whereas if you deep down, if you still hold yourself as existing independently, unaffected by any other factors, and just say, oh, the form is empty, emptiness is form, it doesn't really work. So emptiness is it cannot be posited without relation to some basis on which it has to be established. So emptiness by itself cannot exist in and of itself. It is the ultimate nature of some object on which it is established. So without the object on which you establish emptiness, there is no emptiness. And therefore your emptiness is also posited on the basis of this person. So because of this, there is all kinds of changes that can happen. In Changyaro Bedoji, in his text called Recognizing the Mother, says that this the changes that happen in us is actually the face of the mother, which is emptiness. So you have to overcome this grasping at the self, independent self, without which you cannot overcome attachment and hatred and all these delusions. So Master Nagarjuna says in the 24th chapter of Mula Madhyamaka Karika, the karma and delusions come from the distorted conception, and that in turn comes from some kind of reification, and this reification is overcome through emptiness. And in the 400 verses of Arya Deva, it says the grasping at true existence is something which permeates all kinds of perceptions of ordinary beings, just like what is known as the bodily faculty of consciousness, and the bodily faculty is covers the whole body. So likewise, all the afflictive thoughts and emotions are actually permeated by this true grasping at true existence. Whereas you can see that attachment, just attachment itself, is not ignorance as such, and likewise, just hatred does not go together with all the other kind of delusions. But ignorance goes with all kinds of delusions, including attachment, hatred, and so forth. So the non-meritorious actions come from the ignorance. So since Buddhism says that this, the root of suffering is this ignorance, not knowing the nature of things. So how do we get rid of it? Not through prayer, not through any kind of other practices, but through training the mind and developing this wisdom which goes against it. So, for example, if you want to learn the alphabets, you have to learn the English alphabet and Tibetan alphabets. You have to, if you want to get rid of the ignorance about them, you can't just pray and learn them, but you have to actually study them. And then through that knowledge of the alphabets, you can overcome that ignorance. So within Buddhism, there is the ignorance is on the one hand distorted view, and on the other hand, it is also said to have the mere not knowing about the nature of things. And therefore, Aryadeva goes on to say in his 400 verses that all the delusions can be overcome by overcoming this ignorance. And so, therefore, right in the beginning, one should realize this dependent origination of things to overcome this in ignorance. because ignorance grasps at something which is not there, grasp at things as having some kind of true existence from their side, whereas that's not the way things exist. Things exist through dependence on other factors. And in the collective topics also you study about mutually exclusive things, indirect or directly mutually exclusive, and so forth. So, for example, yesterday I gave the example of this hall being empty of devoid of elephant. So either you have to say elephant is here, or there's no elephant. There's no third alternative. And similarly, you can talk about things like a vase and non-vase. Either a thing has to be a vase or a non-vase. So a mutually exclusive phenomena have to be such a way that it has to be either one way or the other. No third alternative can be possible. So, if things are dependent, then it cannot be they cannot be independent. If they are independent, they cannot be dependent. So, things coming about as a result of causes and other conditions, it cannot arise without depending on them. So this rejects that the things have some kind of independent existence, which is not depending on, arising without depending on other factors. And so Master Nagarjuna says that this teaching of dependent origination is the treasure of the teaching of the Buddha. And so we can explain all the different kinds of the nature of things on the basis of this. Whether it's in terms of causality, where causes and conditions give rise to their effects, and the effects are dependent on their causes and conditions. So when you talk about the causes giving rise to their effects, it is merely this way of existence is merely imputed. And then persons and things do not have any self-identity from their own side. They have to be posited in dependence on other factors. So this is how you have to understand that meditation on emptiness can go counter to our negative thoughts and emotions. So within those of the negative emotions, there are within negative emotions there are those which are not a view as such, and then there are those which are views. So those who say that there's no essence in Buddhism, it's just an orthodox system. You have to explain to them Buddhism through this way. You cannot. You can say that this is something you can learn, actually. You cannot just say this is the tradition. This is. So there's no danger of losing it to the thieves. We cannot see that Buddhism is now stolen by America or anything like that. So we can actually teach Buddhism as academic knowledge, and also the Buddhist philosophy. And within Buddhism, we can talk about, say that there are these 4 different philosophical schools, and it becomes a really huge marketplace, and from which you can buy anything. Whether you want to buy something or not, it's up to you. But so when you talk about these things as a basis, at the basis level, we are not talking about this being a Buddhist teaching or it's good or bad, anything like that. We can just explain what delusions are and so forth, without attaching the Buddhism. So when you are happy, recite this verse: not committing any evil, cultivating wealth of virtue, taming your mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. And the main teaching of the Buddha is that the wisdom has to be complemented by the method, and method by wisdom. And the wisdom here is that of what is taught in the verse, which says you have to view as impermanent, like these things, like those of the those of the star, and cataract, and so forth. So this verse teaches the philosophical view of Buddhism, that you have to see that things are like this, impermanent, and so forth. So when you're happy, just give thought to this, and then in your day-to-day life, check how these negative thoughts and emotions arise in you, attachment, hatred, and so forth. Check within yourself. If you can do that, that would be very good. Of course, everyone is the same in terms of not wanting suffering but wanting happiness. But most people try to draw happiness from distracting themselves with some kind of visual or audio stuff. Like listening to sing songs or watching things outside and so forth. And they try to draw some kind of satisfaction by watching things, visual things outside, like different colors and forms and so forth. And some try to do that by listening to songs, or some even by drinking alcohol and tasting the alcohol and so forth. And so this is what we call desire ram in Buddhism, because we try to draw satisfaction, which is a mental peace, through these outer, external things. So these kind of satisfactions are there so long as the external stimulus is there, whereas there are people who, whereas if they're not there, then you do not have any satisfaction as such. You can draw For example, there are people who cannot kill their time without being able to distract themselves with these external factors. And then there are elderly people who just seem to be waiting for their death. And because all their family members, children and grandchildren have left them, and then they remain left alone. And because of some trying to find some kind of satisfaction from outside, they have nothing else to do, but they just go around different countries on tour and so forth. Whereas, for example, a Christian practitioner who are dedicated to their practice, I've seen many people in Christian monasteries which are away from towns and villages, just remaining there by praying to God and trying to find their satisfaction. And similarly, it's in Buddhism, trying to find comfort and satisfaction from outside. It's just something that we do on the side. Whereas the main thing is to overcome our delusions, the afflictive thoughts and emotions, because they are the ultimate cause of our suffering. So try to become aware of them and train your mind. Be broad-minded, calm, and then day by day you can train your mind and you can draw real satisfaction. So scientists today, even scientists today say that our immune system is disturbed by anxiety and fear. The immune system is eaten into by our very strong kind of hatred, anger, and fear. Fear, they eat into our immune system, they say. So of course, if you remain calm, of course there is suffering. So long as you are in samsara, under the sway of our own negative emotions and karma, of course there will be suffering, pain, and all this. But with that knowledge, you can remain calm. And then you can go over this verse from Shantideva's Bodhicharya Avatara. If there is a remedy, why be unhappy? If there's no remedy, what is the point of being unhappy? So if there is a possibility to overcome something, then you have to find the means to do that. If there is no way, then you should not feel disturbed yourself. And then in this way you can draw real satisfaction and calm and peace of mind. And then when it comes to bodhicitta, you dedicate yourself for the welfare of others. So whatever you do, whatever you think, whatever you say will be a source of happiness, a pleasure for yourself, satisfaction for yourself. And then you can dedicate your body for the welfare of others, and you can dedicate your speech and mind to for the welfare of other sentient beings. And regard all sentient beings as your guests. then you'll find whatever you're doing as something worthwhile. As Shantideva says, which sensible person will feel fatigued to journey to go on the journey of enlightenment without feeling any sense of tiredness. A journey to enlightenment led by this bodhicitta from place to place. So long as you remain in samsara, you can, if you think like this, by dedicating yourself for the welfare of others, it's really good. But it doesn't mean that the samsara is something very pleasurable existence. So, of course, compared to the blissful experiences that we may draw from such thinking, comparing it to those of the blissful experience of the arahats and so forth, it's nothing, but still you can draw great satisfaction from them. And Shantideva says that without exchanging one's happiness and others' suffering with others' suffering, there's no way you can become a Buddha. So now we'll do the bodhicitta ceremony. In the Pali tradition, they talk about Shakyamuni Buddha in terms of the historical Buddha himself only, who lived 2,500 years ago. Whereas in the Sanskrit tradition, the historical Buddha is someone who has the nature of the four kayas, out of which he is that of the emanation body. So Buddhas have multiple varieties of emanations. So the emanation body comes from that of the Sambhogakaya form of Buddha, and from which comes that of the supreme emanation, which is then accessible to ordinary sentient beings with pure karma. And then there are other kinds of emanation bodies of a Buddha. So these two form bodies of the Buddha arise from that of the wisdom Dharmakaya. As soon as you attain this wisdom Dharmakaya, which is able to see everything spontaneously and simultaneously, from this Dharmakaya arises the two forms, Buddha, the physical dimensions of Sambhogakaya and Nirmanakaya. So, with regard to this the fact that we can attain Dharmakaya is because of the nature of emptiness. This emptiness of mind is all there, while the mind is not purified of negativities, and it is also there. One becomes Buddha. So ordinary people so the great ordinary beings are the emptiness, or the what is known as the Buddha nature is there even during the time of ordinary state. Whereas when this Buddha nature is completely free from all kinds of faults, then you become a fully enlightened Buddha. So that's so with regard to the evolution of the external world, it starts with space and goes into the wind, space, fire, then wind, fire, water, and soil, earth, and then in the dissolution process, it's the other way around. The process reverses. So if sentient beings have rough or gross physical aggregates, so the external world is something without mind, inanimate, whereas the animate beings have the sentiency. So, with regard to the animate beings like us who have psychophysical aggregates during the dissolution process, what happens is this earth dissolves into water, water into fire, fire into wind, and wind into the space. And now the space, in connection with the sentient beings, is not the outer space as such, but and within the space there is division into the four empties. So when sentient beings evolve, it starts with the fourth empty state, and then which gives rise to the third, and then the second, and the first. And then it gives rise to the consciousness to gives rise to the wind energy, winds giving rise to fire, fire to water, water to earth. So this is how sentient beings come into existence. And then during the reverse order of these, they die during the dying stage. So this fourth emptiness is that of the clear light. So this state, during that state of the clear light consciousness, it is not affected by those the delusions, the afflictive thoughts and emotions. So after what is known as the 80 different conceptions have dissolved, then the clear light mind cannot be by this the delusions. So this clear light, the subtle clear light at the time of death, is that of the Svabhavakaya. This transforms into the Svabhavakaya of the Buddha at the resultant stage when we become Buddha. And this is so termed as the spontaneously arisen Buddha body, which is mentioned in the Gandhapada tradition of Chakrasambhara. So within the Svabhavakaya of a Buddha, on top of the usual two, we can have this third one, the spontaneously arisen Svabhavakaya. The first two are mentioned even in Sutra, whereas when it comes to Tantra, there's this third one. And because of attaining it, you have the wisdom Dharmakaya. And so imagine all the Buddha, Shakyamuni, and then the 17 masters of Nalanda and Atisha, together with his disciples, and then all the masters, great enlightened masters of different Buddhist traditions of Tibet, in the space before you, surrounding the Buddha. So let's see this 7-limb prayer. 3 times. So let's see the verse of taking refuge in bodhicitta 3 times. So sit, crouch. So imagine the Buddha and surrounded by all the upholders of the Dharma, all the great masters of Buddhism, of India and Tibet, and think that you want to become Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, and therefore you are going to take refuge in the 3 jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, until you become a Buddha. And whatever practices you do, such as keeping morality, practicing patience, giving, and so forth, all these are for the benefit of all sentient beings, to become a Buddha for the sentient. Whether there is an end to the samsara or not, as this question was raised yesterday, all sentient beings are equal in terms of not wanting suffering but wanting happiness, and all sentient beings are equal in the sense that they have the Buddha nature, and that they can overcome suffering, and they have the potential for cultivating bodhicitta and attain Buddhahood, and therefore have this motivation to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, and repeat this to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until I'm enlightened. The practices of giving and so forth that I've done, may they become cause for me to become Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. Sangye Chötam Tsoge Shonam Chanchu Bardo Dane Gyapsuchi Dage Jinso Gebe Tsonamgi Dola Penjiri Sangye Drobar Sho Sangye Chötam Tsoge Shonam La Chanchu Bardo Dane Gyapsuchi Dage Jinso Gebe Tsonamgi Dola Penjiri Sangye Drobar Today my life has become fruitful. I have attained a good human life. So the essence, this is the essence of the Buddha. All the teachings of the Buddhism, in the Hinayana and Mahayana, are meant for preparation for cultivating bodhicitta and actual practice or cultivation of bodhicitta, and the practices that you do consequent to taking cultivation of bodhicitta. So Tibetan Buddhism is a complete teaching of the Buddha, and you have to make this practice or cultivation of bodhicitta as main practice. So we'll have questions now. When I see beings who are in difficult situations, or some who are angry and so forth, then it makes me less compassionate towards them. It becomes more difficult for me to develop compassion. With regard to cultivation of compassion, you have one thing which is not feeling the suffering to be unbearable, and then also when you see someone engaging in some actions which may give rise to suffering, thinking that this person is really creating something negative which will give rise to suffering for him or her. So usually I talk about two levels of compassion. On a general, conventional, worldly level, there is compassion. On the second level is that of compassion actually arising through training of mind. So the first level of compassion is something which we, as ordinary people, even animals can have this. Animal mothers can have great compassion towards their children. to avoid them, to protect them from suffering. The mothers, even animal mothers, can have this spontaneous reaction to even giving up their life for the sake of the child. So this is not because of religion or some kind of training or anything like that, but instinctively this happens. This is innate. So this doesn't need to training of mind or meditation, or do not think about reasonings. So, but this is a limited, partial kind of compassion and love, which is affected by attachment. It's also this happens because of using oneself as the reason, thinking that this person, that person has done something good to me, or is beneficial to me, helpful to me, and things like that. So this isn't something ordinary. So here, when we talk about cultivating compassion, or great compassion especially, for that the biological kind of compassion and love becomes the seed, and then we should use our reasoning and train our mind over a long period of time and through meditation, and then you experience a compassion which is not because others do good to you, but because just like oneself, others want happiness, and likewise others don't want happiness, just like oneself. So seeing this fact, and also seeing that the suffering that we are going through is something which can be overcome and come to an end. And when you when you're aware of this fact, then you can think compassionately. When you see someone doing something bad, so this kind of suffering, compassion is that happens when you see someone really suffering from some kind of sickness. When I see people come to me when they are sick and all that, of course this perhaps there's nothing I can do about their sickness, but I cannot remain passive without at least thinking about the suffering. And I can think in terms of this suffering having come because of their karma, which has in turn arisen because of negative thoughts and emotions which are rooted in their ignorance. And so in this way I'm thinking about the suffering of that person from a broader perspective, and not just worrying about the suffering, narrowing my vision down to just a temporary kind of suffering. So the sufferings that we have, the temporary sufferings that we have, cannot be overcome, even by the Buddha himself. We cannot do. When I was in Patna, after the chief minister was. After the chief minister has said, during the chief minister's speech, he said, may the state be prosperous through the blessing of the Buddha. And then during my turn, I said, if it was possible for the state to develop and make progress, then it should have already happened, because you already have the blessing of the Buddha. So, whether this state becomes prosperous or not, whether there's development and progress in the state or not, is dependent on you as the chief minister. So, I hope that I said I hope that the blessing of the Buddha goes through you, and so that the state becomes more prosperous. And so the Buddha himself has said the suffering of sentient beings cannot be picked out like picking out the thorn, nor can it be washed with water and so forth, but by showing the truth. I'm sorry, I can't hear him. I think he was saying that we have to offer long life pujas. And so his suggestion is that many different organizations make lots of offer long life pujas to His Holiness, and therefore this should be rather limited, because His Holiness is now old, and His Holiness needs much more rest. If the situation of Tibetan situations remains like how it is, if the Turku system in Tibetan society remains continues like it is, will it be relevant in the future, or should there be some change in this Turku system, recognizing reincarnations of different lamas? So we have talked about it in the past, that those who are already history, those who have been recognized as great masters, which are actually proving helpful. Of course, when some of these lamas become disgrace to the Dharma, then, of course, do things which are harmful to others, then it is disgrace to the Lama. So I have suggested that if we were to keep on recognizing lamas and Turkus, of course it's good if the Turkus are really authentic, but then the number increases, and it becomes too much sometimes, and if they don't really prove worth, it's not so useful, but it's difficult to change this system right away. So I pray for His Holiness's long life, and that Tibetans can get back to Tibet in front of the Dalai. During your discussions with the scientists, how do you discuss Buddhist philosophy with them? Because in it we're talking about law of karma, law of the reincarnation, and all these. What is their reaction to if you are discussing about these things? What are their reactions? As I said yesterday, the topic of universals and particulars is something which is common in logic. Of course, the interpretation of universals and particulars is different in the non-Buddhist traditions. So this the relevant topics with the scientists is that of interdependence. Although they don't use this term interdependence, but for example in the Darwinian theory of evolution it is talking about interdependence of things. So it's relevant there. And also the theory in Buddhism that things cannot be found under investigation when you analyze them. This also becomes relevant to the quantum physics. So I know someone who uses this term interdependence, and I told him, in science, do you have this idea of interdependence? He said no, but he said jokingly to me that this term, the interdependence or dependent origination, is something which is now entering into the scientific world, and he's told me that it has found a chair in the scientific world. It has pushed itself into the scientific world and has found a chair in it. And then he said that when you talk about quantum physics, they cannot point to something as being this and that thing, and which is very similar to this the Madhyamaka view that things cannot be found once you analyze them. And in the Chitta philosophy also they say that there is no external phenomena because you cannot find when you break up things into the particles and the subparticles and so forth, and you cannot find anything there, and therefore they say there's no external phenomena. This is because they are not able to assert the fact that although things cannot be found under analysis, still by mere imputation they can exist. By designation, this is something that the Madhyamaka philosophy is able to assert. So for that, the idea of the interdependent nature of things helps in understanding it. I do not talk about past and future lives with the scientists at all. When they when they raise this question, I say that this is Buddhist business. But now people have started investigating into the subtle nature of the mind, even after clinical death, whether there is a consciousness or not. We Tibetans call Lamas staying in Tugdam, a meditation, even after clinical death. So this is something which is there. It's a fact. So how does this kind of happen? The investigation on this is going on. So some scientists are paying attention to this. So this has some connection with past and future lives, but we are not. We are using this as some kind of common knowledge, but not trying to justify the past and future lives to the scientists, because this is something that they don't accept yet. It's like forcing them to accept if I do that. He showed this book, which is written by a Tibetan author who lives in Tibet. I think he was recently arrested by the Chinese for writing this book, which is called Namsa Koje. And he uses the term revolution or renaissance in his book in relation to the 2008 uprising all over Tibet against the Chinese rule. So this guy was saying that revolution, in terms of the Gandhi's revolting against the English, is something that whatever is Western or British should not be there in India. But His Holiness objected to that. He was trained as a lawyer in. He studied law in England, and he knew law. So basically he's asking what is meant by revolution or renaissance. His Honor says this is something you cannot fight if you put it under the lens of analysis. You cannot find what revolution is. And when I was in China, Mao Zedong said that Buddha was a revolutionary. Why that is? The reason is that he said was that the Buddha was someone who was against the caste system that existed in India. And on another occasion, when I met Mao Zedong, he said religion is a poison. For example, in Tibet, it has hampered progress of the nation, increase of population, and also material development have been hampered by the religion, he said to me. So from the point of view of interdependent nature of things, you cannot just pick up one thing and say this thing is 100% good. But you can say this is good in relation to something else, and it is bad in relation to others. So, with regard to Mao Zedong, of course, in the beginning he was really dedicated for the welfare of. So at that point, at one point of time, before the Cultural Revolution in China, Mao Zedong was not against that of the compassion, whereas during the Cultural Revolution, he was really against everything that was traditional. So you have to talk about revolution from different perspectives. And then, with regard to revolution in Tibetan history, there was a case when one of the kings tried to make everyone equal in wealth, distributing the wealth from the richer people to the poorer and try to make them equal. So that is also a revolution. And then, during the time of the Tibetan king Tizong Detsen, by him inviting Guru Padmasambhava and Chandarakshita and so forth. So Sarji, or this revolution, this also can be considered as a revolution because he brought in the Buddhist system and established it and made transformation in Tibet of the old culture. So even after the invasion of Tibet by China, there has been a series of revolutions. Then the 50s and 60s there was another one, and then from 66 to 70 there was the Cultural Revolution, and then many different series of revolutions happened in China after Mao, and then in 2008 there was this widespread protest. I met an Amdo man in Varanasi in 2008 who told 2009 that told me that this was a venting out of the descent of the Tibetan 3 generations of Tibetan people. What happened in 2008? So he said that this spirit of Tibetans will remain for in the future as well. So this you have to understand or interpret the revolution in connection with different situations. In Lamrim Chemu, Tsongkhapa says that if those who say that the meditation is only the focusing meditation is like saying, picking up one grain and saying all grains are like this. So revolution has different aspects, different natures. So you have to take into account the different factors that work for this. So I've not seen the book, but people can have different opinions. With respect, restorations to you, His Holiness. The self, which is said to be posited, whether it has a beginning or end. So His Holiness just responded saying that you have not read my book that came after my last talks. You have already said there is no beginning to it. So with regard to the sock or lifespan, there are many different interpretations according to Abhidharma and according to the Tantras. So I had this opportunity to meet with children from different institutions. I'm happy. So as humans we have to live a meaningful life, which is living a happy life, which cannot come about by disregarding the happiness of others, by deceiving others, being dishonest, and so forth. This is 100% wrong method of finding happiness. For example, the Chinese communists say that they say that they are creating happiness for people by actually snatching away the freedom and privileges, rights of people. So all of us have the right to have a happy life, even animals, and therefore it's important for us to choose vegetarianism, which is increasing, of course, in our society. So for mental peace of mind, the way you draw this is as I've explained. From my own experience, if your mind is calmer, more disciplined, controlled, then there's less suffering. And even if you face some difficulties, you are better adapted to face it. So you should not think. It's wrong just to think about money and external material amenities for happiness. For example, in Japan, there's so much material progress and development. Still, there are many suicide cases of suicide amongst school children. And in America also many people who are insane people, like who even murder other people. Happened in China also. Just yesterday there was in the news that one Chinese man came into the legal court, and killed others and killed himself. And also there were cases of murdering other people, stabbing them with knives. So there are these kind of stories that we hear, which people say that they have done this because they were unhappy. After the last earthquake in Tibet, Gyugodo, recently, one journalist from perhaps Hong Kong had told me that he went to that place. And he said that he was also in Chengdu when there was this earthquake in 2006 or 2008. And he said that the Tibetans, when he saw the Tibetans, they were very calm. They were the Chinese after the earthquake kind of turned their suffering into anger. He said this was what he found, and whereas this was not the case in Tibet. And so this is because of Tibetan spirituality, religion, Buddhism. So perhaps Buddhism has some effect on how people think, on their emotion and so forth. Whether you think about future life or not, even just in this life, if you think about things in a broader way by thinking about the interdependent nature of things, then you have greater calmness of mind. You will not pick up one thing and point at that and try to make that as the cause or root cause of your suffering and so forth. But you will see even that if you see the thing from a broader perspective, then you will not point to one thing as the cause of your suffering. So Buddhism is something which we should be proud of, that we can share with others. For this is a pride of us Tibetans, and also preserve the Tibetan language. And the preservation of our culture also should be done through modern education, without which we would just be without hands. Look at Gandhi himself. He had modern education, and therefore he used this as a tool to fight for freedom of India. And therefore it is important to pay attention to our own culture, Buddhism, which is that of the Buddhist philosophy concept, and so be highly educated in modern subjects. We are fighting for the justice of our people. Of course, generations will change. So my generation, people of my generation are slowly finishing, and therefore your generation, the younger generation, have to put effort. You have a special responsibility at this critical time in our history for people. We are a people which has a history of thousands of years. So Buddhism in general has been preserved by us. The language which we use to preserve this culture is our language, Tibetan. And so it is very important for the Tibetan people to survive, for the preservation and promotion of this culture. Therefore, it has great relevance to the preservation of the well-being of sentient beings and the preservation of Dharma. So of course, the truth will prevail for Tibet. Of course, the past. We are not even dreaming about the past Tibet. There's not a single Tibetan who thinks about going back to the past. Not even one who dreams about it. So we are now should think about making developments and progress in the modern world. So if you have our own religion, culture and the language, then together with the modern education, we will be more satisfied. It will be beneficial to oneself, its individual, and also to the people of Tibet. So you have to see things from all different angles, and then give thought. You should not be blind in one eye, but see with both your eyes. everything. So tomorrow you'll be having a discussion with the Tibetan Prime Minister. So this is good. So our problem, the Tibetan problem, is not because Dharma has declined, but because we lost our freedom. So what we have done so far in order to solve the problem, and what is the purpose and reason, and whether they are practical or not, and so forth, will be sometime we should talk about this, and whatever questions you may have, you should ask. So what we have done so far for the freedom of Tibet, you have to ask about this, what means we have, and so forth. You should not just raise your voice that we don't want to be under the Chinese, we want Chinese out of Tibet and all this. So you have to think about whether you can actually accomplish the goal or not, whether you are able to do it or not, whether they're suitable or not, and so forth. So even if you're talking about independence, you just can't just shout about it. If you want the Chinese to quit Tibet, of course, even if you may raise your voice high, it's not quite sure whether they will leave or not. So these are facts. Our generation faced this difficulty that we are going through because of things having gone wrong for over centuries in Tibet. We only focused on the religion. Of course, we cannot just the religion itself is not at fault as such. If we had been practical of what Mahayana Buddhism is teaching, then we would not have made mistakes. But we have used the name of religion, and then try to find advantage, use that for one's own advantage, selfish, and to defeat others. And therefore we made the mistakes. But the fact that we still live in solidarity as one people is because of our religion. So whether we are those of Kampas or from the other Uizang region of Tibet, we are all living as one people. It's because of this. Of course, we have slackened our efforts, even so it is said that during the time of Dromtempa, he made there was a census of the Tibetan population, which was said at that time to be 10 million. But after that, it seems the population has decreased. Perhaps there are too many monks and nuns. So Mao Zedong was partly right when he said religion has hampered the increase of population. The quality of monks is more important than the quantity. The quality has to be good. Of course, So of course the teachings say that there's no essence, no substance in things, but you cannot just say that while saying that if you try to be selfish, then it's not good. So you have to make changes. In the past there were people who resisted change, old men who just went by their books and said you cannot make change because the book says this and that, and so you have to make change, just like the Buddha has said in the Heart Sutra. This mantra that Yathagate Gate shows that we have to make progress and just remain the same and be resistant to change. This was what had been done, but there's nothing. The tragic thing happened because all the causes and conditions for that was complete. So through causes and conditions, there's great change happening in the world. Everywhere. It's not the same world today like it was in the past. So because the change is bound to happen, it is sure that the sun will shine again for Tibet. Truth will prevail for us. So please take initiative in discussing with Rinpoche tomorrow about Tibet, and especially those who have come from other parts of India. So Holiness is asked to raise hands. Those who have come from outside and those who have come for the first time in this time and have not been here before. So you have to make your trip here worthwhile. Don't say to people that I've been to Dharamsala for 3 days. There was this meeting, but I didn't get anything. You should not. So you have to have something to carry with you that you can keep in your mind. So you have to say that the rumors are not reliable. The real thing is this: whatever you learn from here. So you can make notes. Perhaps there will be recordings of this teachings and the talks, and then use them. If you find something beneficial, then you keep them in your mind, and you can actually habituate yourselves with these teachings. If there's nothing helpful, useful, then you can forget about it. So first you have to hear things from other people. So from that you gain the wisdom of hearing, wisdom based on hearing, and then whatever you have heard, when you give thought to it, then you actually give rise to the wisdom arising from contemplation, and then when this becomes firm, you have what is known as inferential cognition, valid cognition. And then whenever you have gained certitude and through this kind of contemplation, you can apply them in your day-to-day life. Then that kind of insight that you draw from this concentration is can be called like the wisdom arising from meditation. So even in the modern subjects, whatever you're studying, you need these three types of wisdom. So you go to classes and make notes of what your teachers are teaching you. In China, whatever is being said by the leaders are being noted by others, and then they're not really being practical about it. So whatever you're studying, you're supposed to listen to them, and after having cultivated this kind of wisdom arising from hearing, then you give thought to whatever you have heard, and even you can discuss with your teachers and then gain some conviction in them. And so these has to become like whatever you learn has to be like the key, so to open the lock. So the lock is your intelligence. So you have to open that lock of intelligence. And so that you become more broad-minded and be able to think that doing such and such thing, there's advantage and there's a disadvantage of doing the others and so forth, to being able to distinguish between them. And so don't be just lost on one single thing alone, because then there's danger of becoming depressed. So be careful. So be able to make sure that you are able to use your intelligence both on secular and religious terms through the cultivation of the wisdom arising from hearing, reflection, and meditation. So perhaps we'll meet next time.